Good evening, my name is Erin Rhoads. Thank you for coming out here to listen to me talk all about rubbish. It's a bit hard to leave my little baby boy tonight, but I'm very excited to be here and tell you about how I got my 4 years of my rubbish to fit into this coffee jar right here. So I'm here to talk about my zero waste life. Did we turn this off? No, you can hear me? Okay. I'm not really used to using a microphone. I usually just scream out to the audience with my enthusiasm. Why I started on this journey and where I'm at kind of today, and all the speed bumps I've encountered along the way as well. This is my jar of waste. This is my rubbish bin. I've got it here with me today. This is about 4 years of rubbish. Everything I've not been able to recycle or reuse in any way. It's mainly full of receipts actually in there. I'm going to need a new jar soon, I think, as well. So what is zero waste living? It's when you make the active decision to divert as much as you can from landfill by following a set of principles. And these principles are, sorry if I sound a bit nasally, I'm just getting over a cold. My 1-year-old son passed on to me. It's rethinking, refusing, reusing, reducing, sharing, choosing things that will rot, and also participating in composting, and it's also recycling as a last resort. So how did this all start? If you had met me 6 years ago, I would never, ever, ever, ever have thought I would be up here speaking to you, let alone being in the crowd listening to someone talk about how to live more sustainably. Climate change, the environment, I was aware of it, but it was all a bit like boring to me, all a bit too big. So it started when I happened to be sick one day and I was stuck at home. My sister gave me a call to see how I was feeling. And I said I was really bored. I'd run out of all my Nicholas Sparks movies. Did you have anything inspiring that I could watch? And she's like, yeah, I saw this really great documentary called The Clean Bin Project. And I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. And she told me it followed this couple from Canada who gave themselves the challenge to buy nothing new for 1 whole year and to create no rubbish for 1 whole year. I was like, this is what you want me to watch? Really? She's like, no, it's really good. You should go watch it. Go watch the trailer. So I did. And the star of this documentary was a redhead. And because I've got red hair, I was like, I better support my fellow redhead. But really, I was desperate. And the idea of it was a bit crazy. I wanted to see, could you actually produce no rubbish for 1 year? So it was during this documentary, it felt like the curtain had been pulled back. My life was absolutely exposed. And one thing that really got to me and actually left me in tears was the lace-sand albatross. Now, the lace-sand albatross, you might have seen this picture. It's this beautiful, majestic bird who go to this part of the Pacific, the Midway Atoll. That's where they raise their chicks. Now, unfortunately, now surrounding the Midway Atoll is this big kind of plastic soup called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So these beautiful birds have been going out to this area to fish for their food, to take back to their chicks, but they don't realise it's so full of plastic that, you know, has come from Australia, come from China, come from anywhere in the Pacific, taken them by ocean currents. So these birds go out, fish for their food, and they collect it up in their beaks and they take it back to the atoll. They feed it to their babies. As we all know, no bodies on this planet are equipped to kind of pass through plastic, especially when you're feeding things like lighters and big chunks of plastic. It just sits there and builds up and builds up and builds up. And their brains think that they're full, so they end up starving to death. And most of the plastic that has ended up on this Midway Atoll has been brought there not only by ocean currents from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, but just from the insides of these birds. And if you look up Midway Atoll, you would just see like piles of these beautiful birds who have unfortunately died from us. So this was really, really confronting. And it was after this documentary, I couldn't stop thinking about plastic and how much plastic I was using. I wasn't necessarily throwing anything into the rivers, into our oceans. I wasn't littering. Everything I did was put into a bin. But I was contributing in an indirect way because I was buying a lot of plastic. So after a couple of days and just feeling uneasy about this, I decided I wanted to make a change. So I jumped onto Google, like everyone does in this day and age, and I typed in a problem, and mine was, how do I reduce my plastic? So while I began searching, I discovered all this other information about plastic. Over 250 species have been known to become entangled or ingested some type of plastic. 40% of our packaging is plastic. There's the health concerns of BPA, which I'm sure a lot of us heard when BPA was banned in some baby products. Unfortunately, that's been replaced with something called BPS, which they're finding is just as bad as BPA. Plastics never break down. I was under that assumption that anything you sent to landfill broke down eventually, didn't it? It didn't just pile up there. And then there was also this horrible realization that plastic acts like a magnet in the oceans. It sits there and attracts every other harmful chemical we've put in there. So like your DDTs, your dioxins, it all attracts to the plastic. So when the fish or the birds go and eat this, they're taking in all these other chemicals with them, and they work their way up the food chain until they're on our plates. Plastic production has a huge, heavy environmental footprint. I didn't realise that it was a non-renewable resource that then was shipped somewhere to be turned into little plastic pellets, to then be shipped somewhere else to be turned into a plastic object, to then be shipped to us to be taken to our cafes where we use a fork once and then we throw it away. It was all getting a bit crazy. And then of course it was the people as well, the people who make these products. It's often done in countries where environmental practices are and environmental laws are a lot more relaxed than our countries. So they're exposed to a lot of these chemicals that we don't get exposed to, and so my contribution to buying plastic was obviously harming people's health, people's well-being. So through my search of figuring out what I should do, I stumbled across this funny little website called Plastic Free July. Has anyone done Plastic Free July? A couple of you. I tell you what, by the end of July, you'll all know what Plastic Free July is, especially if you're going to watch the War on Waste. So Plastic Free July at the time was this funny little organisation run out of Perth, WA, and it asked you to give up plastic instead of alcohol. Everyone's heard of Dry July, I'm sure. So while my friends were doing Dry July, I thought, I'll just give up plastic, easy. So I started replacing all those single-use plastics in my life. I got rid of the bags. Instead of getting takeaway, I sat in and I ate my food. I replaced my plastic water bottles with a reusable water bottle. Reusable containers were swapped out. I would sit in and have my hot drinks. I said no to straws, and I would avoid the produce bags. Now, all these things that were to be replaced, that was really easy because they've been around for a very long time. Reusable bags, we've been using those for thousands of years. We've enjoyed our drinks without straws for a very long time. We've never had a lot of plastic takeaway containers. All this stuff existed. So what was the hardest part for me was learning how to incorporate those changes into my life. That's the trickiest part, is the behaviour change. And it's actually an area that it's where places like Woolworths and Coles are going to have a lot of trouble with their bag ban because they're going to put a ban in place, but they're not going to help you with those behaviour changes to take those bags in with you. So here are some things that I learnt to do to help me remember, and that was to use my phone. We've all got smartphones probably. If you don't, congratulations, good on you. I just used the calendar and I just popped in reminders, very simple reminders that would pop up throughout the week, throughout the month. On a Friday night, one would pop up, say no to plastic straws at the pub tonight, Erin. Another one would be on Saturday morning, don't forget to take your bags. So I got quite a few reminders throughout that month, so that by the time the month was over, I just expected them and I was able to preempt them and preempt my decisions. Another thing I did was I put reminders around my house as well. It's all about just reinforcing myself. I put them in my pantry, I put them on the fridge, I put them at the front door. Even when I got home from work, I would, on my purse, on my handbag, I'd put a note that just said, don't forget to take your bottle today, Erin. And also I would put things around the house. So I'd try and leave my handbag with my water bottle at the front door, or return my bags at the front door. It's just about those behaviour changes. That's the hardest thing. Getting a reusable bag, getting a reusable water bottle, that's easy because you get them everywhere. So it was also during this Plastic-Free July that I started to learn more about recycling. I always thought recycling was the answer to everything. If you put something in there, someone's bound to sort it and fix it and divert it to where it needs to go. So I started really looking into what was going into my bin. I also learned that plastic is a Band-Aid, recycling is a Band-Aid solution. It's really just holding off from sending things to landfill. A lot of the times when we recycle our plastics, it's being downcycled. So when it's downcycled, it's only recycled once more, and that's the end of its life. So while I was learning all these not so lovely statistics and trying to change these habits, there was these wonderful benefits that just kind of popped up, which I was not expecting at all. First one, I started eating a lot more healthy food because I couldn't go into my 7-Eleven, I couldn't go into any shop and buy whatever I wanted. At the time, I could only really go and eat fruit and vegetables because it was the only thing that I could get unpackaged. The other one was saving money too. Once I started thinking about my plastic usage and where I was spending my money, I got really conscious about what I was spending it on and who I was spending it with as well. So I started saving a lot more money. And because I couldn't go and buy all the different things at the supermarket, I was buying a lot less junk food. I started making my own food as well. I also started shopping locally, which was really, really, really lovely. It's so nice to be able to support my local community, my local shop vendors. It's great to know where my money is actually going. I was able to do more moments and not things. So I was really conscious, especially with my partner at the time, about choosing, instead of going small and spending things, would go for a walk, would go for a bike ride, would go explore our area. And this is something that we've still continued today. And obviously one of the biggest things that happened during that month was my rubbish reduced quite significantly because I wasn't buying really much plastic. The only thing that was really left at the end of that month was just a lot of food scraps. So even though I knew before the end of that month was over I was going to continue going with this plastic-free life, it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard at all in terms of I was able to replace everything. It was just hard in terms of just making those changes and being prepared. But as I showed you, the benefits far outweighed anything else. So as I decided to commit to this life, I decided to make some more changes as well and take it a bit further. So I swapped out those produce bags for ones that my mum whipped up for me from my dad's old shirts. Bread bags as well, I swapped those out. Even if you swap out a bread bag for a reusable cloth bag, if you do that once a week for the rest of the year, that's 52 bags that you're saving. And I also get a nice little discount when I go to my bakery with it because I'm saving them money effectively. And also your bread doesn't sweat as much in a cloth bag, so it doesn't go as mouldy. So there you go, that's a nice one. I also had to swap out shopping at my supermarket because everything there was packaged. And at the time, there was only 2 bulk food stores that I knew of in Melbourne. Now there's a whole suite of them, which is fantastic. So I started going to a bulk food store called Friends of the Earth, and also just a local Lebanese ethnic one in my area that my husband's great-grandparents shopped at as well. So what a bulk food store is, the one that's in my area, the Lebanese one, it's just they get the big sacks from the suppliers and he just comes and dumps them on the ground and you just come and fill them up from those bags. Or the other more fancy bulk stores, when those bags get sent to the store and they get put into those dispensing units that you see up there, and you take your own bags, your own containers, your own jars, and you fill them up. So you're reusing your own packaging. And the packaging that goes to the box store, they will then dispose of that. So it's a lot more waste-wise, I suppose, if you've got only one piece of packaging to consider, rather than trying to convince everyone to recycle or dispose of individually wrapped packaging properly. I also had to get a good collection of jars and bottles and bags to use. So as I showed you before, my mum made some bags from my dad's old shirts, even though she thought I was a bit crazy. I also started collecting jars from my old bottles that ran out, my mother-in-law, also saved up wine bottles to collect my cleaning products in, or wine. But I didn't throw out all my old plastic. Although it was really tempting to throw it all out, I realised that a lot of resources went into this plastic. A lot of resources that if I just sent to an op shop, it's just going to be somebody else's problem and probably just end up in landfill. So I still kept all my old plastic, and I still use it today to collect food when I go to the deli, I want to go to the butcher, if I'm getting cakes, anything. I've been using the same plastics for the last 6 years. I also now store all my food in the glass jars, so I can go to a bulk food store and take my own jars, fill them up and put them directly into my cupboard. It also means that I'm less likely to buy stuff that I don't need as well. I don't know if you were like me, but I used to go to the supermarket and just go through each aisle, just like looking for things or being distracted by how many different varieties of pasta there are. When you go to a bulk store, there's not as much choice, so you will have a quicker shop, which is kind of nice, I think. I also store my food in glass in the freezer as well, and I never had anything break. So when I'm storing food in glass, it's hot, I just wait for it to cool down. I make sure there's about that much left from the top so that if it, so when it expands, it doesn't break the glass. And I only ever use old glass jars like old pasta bottles and stuff like that, because they're really tough glass. Glass jars from like Kmart or the reject shop or anything like that don't do very well in the freezer. They're very flimsy glass. So if you don't have those kind of old pasta bowls, stuff like that, ask your friends and family. The op shops usually have quite a few as well. Some more swaps I made. I got rid of the cling wrap, and I learnt to make my own beeswax wraps back before no one could probably buy them, and you used to just make them with just beeswax. But I found it was even easier to just put a tea towel over my food or a plate on top of the bowl, or into glass jars as well. And I haven't died or anything. A lot of people say, but what about the germs if there's no cling wrap? Well, I'm still alive. And how did human beings used to store our food? We did it pretty well without cling wrap for a very, very, very long time. Another thing I had to do was look at my cleaning products. Under my sinks, I used to have like a tomb of plastic bottles of, spray bottles for every different surface, for every different room. And once I started looking at, all these different products, I realised how many different chemicals were in them. And I started to really look at, well, what's at the basis of each of these? And it was just soap, really. Soap, I find, is the easiest thing to clean my whole house with. I get a bar of soap. I buy a big couple kilos of soap every 2 years. And I'll just grate that down, and I will, turn that into a liquid soap myself, because it's a lot cheaper and you don't need as much. And I'll just put that into a spray bottle, and I can clean my whole house with that. Vinegar is another great way to clean the house too. I use a little bit of bicarb, not very much, because I feel I don't need it too often. And something I love to do is I love to use citrus peels with my vinegar. So when I've used up some like lemon peels, orange peels, because my husband loves lemons, loves oranges, we'll just store them away in the fridge, and then eventually once I've got enough, I'll put them into a glass jar, cover that with some vinegar and let it sit for 6 weeks, and then you've got a really potent, beautiful citrusy cleaner that doesn't smell like vinegar, and it really, really, really works. It's really lovely. So they're all the cleaning products that I use now, and what's great as well is that they all have multiple purposes. Vinegar I can use for cooking, the lemon obviously I can use for cooking, soap I use for my body as well, and also bicarb is for cooking. So that's one great thing about living a low waste life, is that a lot of the products you buy have multiple uses. So another way that you save your money. I also had to look at my cleaning cloths too. Most of those cleaning cloths that we buy are made of synthetic materials, so plastic. And when you wash any type or use any type of fabric, little fibres come off, little microfibres come off. And in this case with synthetic, it's synthetic microfibres. Now unfortunately a lot of the water treatment plants can't collect those little fibres yet, so they escape out into our waterways. And when I was saying before about how all those chemicals connect to plastic, it's even those microfibres that get out into the waterways, and they're the fibres that we can't see that the fish are eating. So when people say, oh, all the fish are eating all this plastic, a lot of it is microfibres. So these kind of cleaning cloths, our plastic clothes, our synthetic clothes, the polyesters, the nylons. So in this case, I decided to swap 2 just old cotton rags, and when they get to the end of their life, I can put them into the compost bin, and they break down within 6 months. For a more scrubby kind of brush, I use a coconut scrubber, or one that's made of agave as well, but there's lots of different options out there. I also decided to swap out my plastic toothbrushes. Plastic toothbrushes are one of the top 10 items found on coastal cleanups for some reason. I don't know how they're getting out there. People must flush them down there or something, I'm not sure. But they are one of the top 10 items found, and also they get swallowed a lot by marine animals. And also another fact about plastic and marine animals, something in plastic lets off a smell, like a sulfur type smell, that tricks a lot of seabirds and other marine animals into thinking it's food. So that's another reason why they eat it, is because it smells like food to them. So I ended up swapping out my plastic toothbrush for a bamboo one. Now the bristles are made of nylon. They take about 100 years to break down in compost. But the body itself, I can take those bristles out, reuse the body in my garden as a garden marker, or just for stirring things in the kitchen, or to give to my son at the moment as a teething toy, which he seems to enjoy. I also learnt to make my own toothpaste. I looked at the ingredients on much of our toothpaste and made instead one of bicarb, clove oil, and peppermint. Bicarb's in every toothpaste, so is clove oil, which we've been using for hundreds of years, and peppermint just for fresh breath. And my dentist is very happy with my teeth. I haven't had any cavities. I brush a lot smarter than what I used to, probably. That was one thing that my dentist said to me. He was like, a lot of people feel like it's toothpaste that just fixes all our problems when it's actually our brushing, so we should be brushing smarter. So I make the habit now to actually brush properly. I also swapped out all those plastic bottles that were cluttered around my shower area and just swapped them out for 1 bar of soap. So that's one thing I was really loved finding out, is just choosing items that I found were necessary for me and not what I've been told is necessary. So, you know, I used to have a shampoo, a face wash, a body wash, a hand wash, all these different types of soaps, when just 1 bar of soap will do everything that I need, and a lot cheaper too. And same with moisturisers. I used to have, you know, the lovely conditioners and probably a hair mask as well, and a face cream and an eye cream and a lip cream and a body cream and a foot cream, a lot of different creams, which I can now just use olive oil or almond oil, or sunflower oil is beautiful. It's got a lot of vitamin E in it. Macadamia oil, there's so many different types of oils, and that's all I need for that. Or you can use something like shea butter as well, just one ingredient that's safe and not full of weird chemicals like parabens and all the plastic from the packaging. We don't know yet if that is putting some more chemicals into our products as well. Makeup was another big area for me. I love wearing makeup. I don't think that if you're going to go eco-friendly, you have to like go barefoot and run out into the bush. I think we can still enjoy the things we used to enjoy, but we just got to do it in a different way. So the beauty industry in 2008 was found to have made 128 billion units of packaging, and of that 128 billion units, 48 billion of that was plastic. And that's not million, that's billion units just for the beauty industry, and much of that isn't recycled either. It was just straight to landfill because there's no information on it, or people just don't know how to recycle some of these items. So when I first started swapping things out, I made my own mascara. I don't make it anymore. Now I've got a little baby, I do not have the time as much. But I used to make my own mascara. It was a cake mascara that was very popular up until about the 1940s, until this tube mascara came in. And cake mascara is pretty much a little cake, a dry cake, and you just wet it with your mascara wand and just wipe it onto your lashes. These days I buy it from Etsy. There's lots of little suppliers on Etsy, and they send it to me in a metal tin, and then once it's empty, I will send it back to them and they will reuse the container, and I'll buy another one. I've been using the same wand for my eyelashes for the last 6 years, so I don't need a new plastic wand each time. I also use, I've actually got it here today, I actually use this is a lip and cheek tint. It's in compostable cardboard with no stickers on it, so when it comes to the end of its life, just goes straight into the compost, and it's made of all natural ingredients too. I've got really oily skin, so I like to wear like a face powder. So these days I use tapioca powder instead. It's very affordable, and it's translucent as well. And I also use that for dry shampoo on my hair when I can't be bothered to wash it. And I also make my own eyebrow powder and also eyeshadow powder from ingredients from my spice cabinet. So it's made out of turmeric, carob and some cinnamon as well. So yeah, I've been making my own stuff. Other things I did, instead of my deodorant, I now use apple cider vinegar, and I just make sure I keep my armpits nice and clean because it's not necessarily us that smells, it's just the bacteria that grows there. So if you wash them more often, it doesn't smell as bad, and also if you wear more natural clothing, it breathes. So the more it breathes, the less likely it's going to smell as well. And a funny thing was, when we were looking for more package-free and more, I guess, friendly options for our bodies, my husband discovered he doesn't actually smell. He doesn't have an odour unless if he does some really intense bike ride or if he's on the tools at his work. So, which was a bit embarrassing because I'm like, well, I smell a bit more than you. But he walked away not smelling at all, which still confuses me to this day. So it made me wonder, like, if we all just took a break for 2 to 3 weeks, you might find out we don't actually smell that bad, you know, because you kind of become a teenager and you're like, well, everyone else is using deodorant, so I better use deodorant too. Or, you know, how many of us bought those impulses when we were younger and we just sprayed them on our bodies? And so you never know. Take a break, you might find that you actually don't need that much deodorant. And you can come smell me later if you want to. So. Another one I changed, which is something I wish I'd known about years and years ago, because they are options that have been around for such a long time. So plastic pads have the equal amount of 5 plastic bags in them, and that's not the packaging, that's the actual product itself that you're putting on your body. So that's quite a lot of plastic to put somewhere where it's quite warm for a woman. So I swapped it out to a cloth pad, and I also swapped out the tampons for a silicone cup. In the last 5 years, I've saved over $500 just making this change. That's a lot of money for a woman, I think, even with if they got rid of the tampon tax. So I highly recommend them. They are wonderful, and yeah, they've been around for quite a long time, so they're very safe. Now, the biggest thing I did to reduce my waste was look at my food scraps, looking what I did with them. So after Plastic Free July, I started up a compost, and it really got rid of all my rubbish because our bins are made up of about 40% of food scraps, which is quite a lot. So composting will reduce that. In my council area, I'm very lucky, in Moonee Valley, they collect our food scraps in our green bin at the moment, but there are so many other ways that you can compost as well. There's bokashi bins. It's a wonderful app and website called sharewaste.com. So you can look onto that and see if there's anyone in your area who will happily take your compost for you. You can also take it to schools, community gardens. You can also get electric composters for your home as well, and they'll turn your food into food scraps within like 48 to 72 hours. Or who knows, maybe if you keep asking your local council, they might provide green bins that will take your compost with you. I think I go to like every council and say that. They're like, yeah, we already get enough of that, please stop. But it's a great thing to do because it also means in my area I can go and get free healthy compost that we can put onto our garden. So it's a beautiful closed loop cycle. It goes to our farmers as well. They can get compost at quite a cheaper rate without any of that synthetic stuff in there too. So it really helps them out. Now, before anything goes into my compost, I look at my scraps and see what I can do to cook with them. So I've got jars in my fridge full of carrots, onion peels, zucchini, tops of tomatoes, just the tops and tails of things. And I save them up, and then I use them to make like a relish in summer, at the end of summer, once I've got enough kind of things for a relish. In winter, I make lots of stocks with them. I'll save up my fruit as well, and I make like teas with them. I even had someone explain to me the other day that you can use fruit scraps to make a really nice self-cleaning enzyme type solution. So I'm going to get her to explain it a bit more with me, but it's pretty much like put fruit scraps, some water, some sugar, and you let it ferment, and then it becomes like this cleaning enzyme. So there's all different ways we can use up our food scraps before they hit the bin. Another thing I do is I'm really savvy before I go shopping these days. I used to be someone who would just go shop and not look at what was already in my fridge and come back with like more carrots or more broccoli or like another jar of mustard or something because it was on sale. But these days I write down everything I've kind of got in my fruit bowl and everything I've got in my fridge. So I'm never doubling up. I also move the stuff I've already got to a location in my fridge so that I know to use that first. And I might sit down and make a bit of a recipe plan before going to the shop, so I make sure I use up all that stuff that's ready to be eaten. Also, if I have too much stuff and I might have to go away somewhere or we're just not able to eat it, I'll call up my family and friends as well and say, do you guys want some lemons, or do you want some apples, or do you want some carrots? I'm not going to use them. I even put up a box at the front of my house just to let people know it's free, it's edible, I'm just not going to get around to eating it. A big question I get is, well, what about plastic liners? Well, once you start composting, you don't need a plastic liner at all because there's nothing wet going in there. So if you want to use a liner, you could try newspaper, which is what I did for a little while. I would just go to the news agency on a Sunday just before they're about to close and be like, can I have just like a stack of papers for free? Because they're just going to put them in the recycling bin anyway. So yeah, if you do it just before they close, you can get some for free. When I'm out and about, I like to be prepared. We like to go do things, we like to go to festivals, like to explore, like to travel. So I take a little kit with me. I take a cup, I take a container, and I also take this thing called a cutlery wrap. So it's just got a spoon, knife, fork, a straw. Sometimes it's got chopsticks in there, and also a napkin as well. So I don't need to take any takeaway things if we're out there. If we're going to a festival, I'll take my own picnic wear as well and just get food on that instead of taking the takeaway. I've never been denied ever. And everyone always says it's such a great idea because it would save them money too. So there's so many other ways we can reduce waste beyond what I've spoken about, and you'll probably realise that you're doing it already. Repairing and upcycling. Do we have anyone in here who likes to repair or get crafty with reusing things? A couple people? I never used to be like that, ever. If something needed repairing, or I would probably have just sent it to Vinnie's, like an op shop, or I would have sent it to landfill, which was really sad actually, because I've come to realise that by repairing our things, we're putting value back into everything, and not just value into the resources and the items, but the people who made our stuff. I think I'd be very disheartened if I made something for someone, and the minute it, had something wrong with it, they just sent it away, sent it to landfill. So this blender up here was something that needed to be repaired. It was just a $20 blender from Kmart, and it broke while I was making some soup. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? I should just go buy a new one. But in the meantime, I really had to get it repaired because I didn't want to send it to landfill. So I looked around to get it repaired, and I found out it's going to cost me $30. Or I could just go buy another $20 one from Kmart. And I ummed and ahed for a very long time, and then I thought, you know what, no, by getting it repaired, I will be valuing those people's hard work, those resources, and I'll also be investing in the skills necessary to continue repairing our stuff. Because if we don't repair our things, the people who make our goods won't make them repairable for us. Once upon a time, all of our items that we bought came with a repair manual, and they don't come with that anymore. It's really hard to get one because no one repairs. And also a lot of companies are making equipment like computers, screens, phones, everything with their own type of screws. So to be able to undo those, you've got to ask that company for a screwdriver, which they're reluctant to give you. So I really encourage people to repair, because if we don't repair, it's just going to get worse and worse. And there's a wonderful website called ifixit.com. And it's an open source website where passionate people about repairing, have uploaded their own repair manuals. So you can go on there and you can look through tens of thousands of manuals for all these different items, and you can find something to help you fix it. And there's also places like repair cafes as well. So if you go to repaircafe.org, it's got a list of all the repair cafes in the world. There's quite a few popping up here in Victoria, which is fantastic. Choosing secondhand. Who here likes to buy secondhand goods? See, that's zero waste as well, because you're just keeping things moving in that circular system. Much like repairing, if you're doing secondhand, you're also valuing the resources, valuing the time that someone went into making their things. I'm wearing all secondhand tonight. So there's so many ways you can buy secondhand. I got these from a consignment store, or you can get them from op shops, friends and family, clothing swaps. Facebook buy swap sells. I got all my kids' baby stuff off of Facebook buy swap sells, and there's niche ones for everything. You can find ones first particular brands as well, my sister was saying. And prams, I was able to get in cribs, baby clothes, books, DVDs, everything you want. I highly recommend going through Facebook Buy Swap Sell. And also your family and friends. The minute I said I was pregnant, I was inundated with friends and family saying, oh, I've got this, do you need that? So there's a wonderful secondhand market out there for all types of goods. Now that blender that broke, and I panicked about it because I was halfway through making my food, at the time when I was looking up getting a new blender or should I get it repaired, I came across the stick blenders and I was like, oh, that'd be kind of good to have because I make soup a lot. But my husband was like, do you make it enough to get a stick blender? Do you need to buy something brand new? And I was like, well, I can buy it secondhand. He's like, no, I don't know if you will. Why don't you just borrow it? And he said, in all his wisdom, do you need a blender or do you just need to blend? I was like, oh, you're too smart sometimes. So he's like, why don't you just ask one of my sisters? He's got a lot of sisters. And so I sent out a message to all of his sisters and they came back and said, yep, you can borrow mine, you can borrow mine, you can borrow mine. So I chose one. I didn't need all of them. And now, so I got it. It did what it needed to do. I cleaned it. I gave it back to my sister-in-law, now sister-in-law. And now I've got this direct line of communication with her and we share quite a lot of things. And it also saves space in my cupboard. Also saved me some money, saved me money from time from having to go shop for it. And my husband's right, I barely would have used it so, until I had my baby. And then I borrowed one off my brother. So I highly recommend sharing and borrowing. Not everyone needs a lawnmower. Not everyone probably needs even a vacuum cleaner either. So there's a lot of different items that we can share. I go to a toy library for my son. So we haven't bought any new toys. We've got a couple that have been handed to us from family and friends. But we just go every 3 weeks to a toy library and we pick out a couple of toys. And if anyone who's had kids know, kids get over toys so quickly. And they just litter up your house very quickly too. So when we told our friends, don't buy us toys, they're like, we understand. No one wants a house full of toys. But the toy library is great. It's another community initiative. There's been toys in the toy library that have been shared for the last 20 years. So they're really well looked after because it teaches kids that those toys aren't yours as well. It teaches them to care for them instead of obviously some kids of a certain age, like a 1-year-old will throw them. So I try to pick toys that you can't throw too much. But they'll get to an age where they learn that we've got to take this back, another child's going to play with this. And they're all cleaned and looked after. It's all very hygienic. A lot of people, when I talk about zero waste and all the things I do, they always talk about the germs. I'm like, it's not that bad. Another one that I like to use is open shed. So if you've got stuff that you would like others to borrow or you're looking for stuff to borrow, you can jump onto open shed and you can look for things like sewing machines or food processors or dehydrators or lawnmowers or anything you need. My husband's also about to do a drop-off at the tool library in Brunswick. So you can go there and you can hire all the tools you kind of want. And it's so great because, again, it's a community initiative, less waste, and also you're bound to make a lot of friends along the way, which I've done. Now, one of the biggest things we can do, especially this year with an election year, is to ask for change. I feel a lot of people squirm up and go like, oh, but I don't want to ask for change. I think that comes from this place of if we speak up, we feel like we're being a pain, like we're causing trouble. But I like to remind others and myself, because I still get nervous about when I speak up and ask for change, is that I'm coming from a place of kindness. I'm coming from a place where I don't want the next generation having to pick up after me or after us, because that's not really very fair. No one likes being told they have to go and clean up a mess that they didn't make, and that's what's going to happen for the next generation. It's what's going to happen for my son in reality. So sometimes I like to speak up and ask for change. It can be very simple, like when I found this lipstick, cheek tint, it came with a plastic sticker on it. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is before you could really get a lot of zero waste beauty stuff. And I said, I'd love your product, but I don't like all the plastic packaging that came with it. It was like came in a plastic bag, a plastic sticker. I was like, when you make your next batch, can you send it to me without the plastic and without the sticker? And I explained why. And she's like, oh, that's easy. I can so do that. So people are willing to listen to you. And people want to make change. They just might not have thought about it because they're perhaps too busy. Another one I did was I went to my local cafe that had all these keep cups, and they had on the board like ethical and we're organic and stuff, but they had all these plastic straws everywhere. So I went in there one afternoon as they were about to kind of close up and it wasn't too busy, and I said, look, I love that you got keep cups and stuff, but have you thought about maybe just putting the straws under the counter and only giving them out if people ask for them? And he was like, oh, that's a great idea, we should totally be on board with that. And they did it. And before I went up there, I was very, very, very nervous because I thought they'd just be like, get out of here, what are you doing? But they were fine because you are coming from a place of kindness. You're not coming to make things harder for them in any way. You're just giving them some suggestions. Another way you can ask for change is by joining a local organisation. It can be a clean-up group. I know there's a lot of beach patrols here in Victoria. Or you could start up a boomerang bags if there's not one already going. And also you could go and speak to your local representatives with the lead up to this recycling crisis as well, and write some letters. Now is a really, really good time to do that. Victoria, we've got a lot of money that could go towards fixing up our recycling systems and encouraging a more closed loop system here, which would also provide jobs and boost our economy. So get to writing letters, because I can assure you, as someone who worked on the other side of the Plastic Bag Free Victoria campaign, all those letters and all those phone calls and all those meetings do make a difference. You might just get a very, one sentence reply, or they might be very like, oh, we can't really, say yes or no to this. But every time you write a letter to a company, every time you write a letter to an MP, they are listening and they take that information back to their boardroom meetings. They take it back to their party room meetings. It is making a dent somewhere, I can assure you. So don't be afraid to ever write a letter or start an online campaign. Can be anything you want to do. Raising awareness is a very powerful thing. So you might have listened to my journey and thought, oh, it looks very easy, straight line. She just went from A to B. But this is what my journey really looked like, and I'm not going to say it was all terribly easy. It was hard. It was quite hard. And that's because I was trying to live a circular economy where our modern day, we're kind of between the linear and recycling economy at the moment. I was trying to live this life where everything's reused and valued, where today everything's made to be thrown away quite quickly. But it's been a wonderful journey in terms of just assessing what is necessary for me. It's very easy for us to get caught up in this world and not think about what is actually making us happy and what is actually necessary for ourselves. So if you've been listening to this and think, I'd like to make some changes, I want to just jump in there, but it seems like there's quite a lot to take on. Just remember, it's taken me 6 years to get here, 6 years to reduce my waste, and it's still an ongoing journey. I'm a parent to a 1-year-old, I'm still facing hurdles. The other day we went with some friends somewhere and my son came back with all these plastic stickers all over him. I was like, oh, here we go, all right. And that's okay, it's okay. Or my husband comes home with a bag of Doritos and I'm like, oh, can't recycle that. But that's okay, it's all a learning curve. And I've said to my husband, you seem to really like Doritos, why don't you just send a message to Doritos and ask for them to recycle their goods better or something like that. So it's still a challenge for me, but I always say to people, lead by example. Don't feel bad if there's people around you using a straw, using a plastic bag, or anything like that. There's ways to encourage each other in gentle ways, because no one likes to be told what to do or how bad they've been. At least I don't. So if you're wanting to make some changes, then I suggest taking it very slowly and start with a bit of a challenge for yourself. You could pretend that plastic bags don't exist for 2 weeks or a month or 3 months, or plastic straws, or you could do all the single-use plastics. You could also start to make a bit of a tally in your house, like on the fridge, and just write down the single-use plastics that come into your life, or the plastic packaging, and see if there's a theme there somewhere, and see if you can look for alternatives anywhere. One thing that I really liked doing was obviously doing the waste audit. If anyone's seen the War on Waste series, I was the one who sat down with the producers and said, you have to get them to empty out their bins and you have to divide everything up and do that whole waste audit. And I was supposed to go up there for that waste audit, but I was 8 months pregnant, thankfully, and didn't have to do that. I was so sick, there's no way I could have done that. So a waste audit is really good because you will see themes, you will definitely see themes like you did in the War on Waste, where there was a lot of organics and a lot of plastic. So if you start to write down everything you're doing, I wouldn't say waste it all the way they did, just do it like write down everything kind of throwing away, and you will see themes and you will see ways that you can reduce your waste. One thing I really recommend doing is to join a community. When I first started, I had no one. That's probably why I started my blog, because there was no one for me to kind of talk to. But these days, there's now zero waste communities popping up everywhere. The one in Victoria's got about over 4,000 members, and it's growing. And there's little communities as in Gippsland, in Bendigo, in Ballarat, in Wangaratta, in Geelong. There's Warrnambool, Mornington Peninsula, everywhere, all through Victoria. And people just go on there and they ask each other questions like, where can I get this plastic free? Where can I go to a butcher who will allow me to take my own container? And what's the best bakery? Who wants to help me go clean up some rubbish? Where can I get this product? So I really recommend going into a store, going into the Facebook group if you can. And if you're someone who doesn't really like Facebook too much, you can just download the Facebook groups app. So you can just go into the group directly without going onto Facebook. And yeah, it's super supportive and everyone's helping each other out, and I really, 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 really recommend it. So this is one of my favourite quotes that I heard last year. It's from knowing comes caring, from caring comes change. I really do believe that the more we learn, the more we're going to want to change. But it's going to take a bit of a gentle approach at the start until our governments can come in and start helping us out a bit more. Because it is hard for us to live this zero waste lifestyle if we don't have support from our governments too. So by writing those letters, I guess we're helping them get to know things, get to know that we are caring, that we want some change. You know, a lot of the changes I've spoken about tonight aren't that too dissimilar to how our great-grandparents used to live. You know, the sharing, the repairing, the buying things that will last for a very long time. You know, the cooking from scratch, the community aspect of it. All those aspects are still there. We still know them. It's just we've kind of forgotten them. We've just been caught up in this need to buy, consume, and support our economy. But we do need to make some changes. We've got an ocean filling up with plastic. We've got a landfills that are expanding across the world. You know, the one here in Melbourne, in the western suburbs, they're looking to expand that. And if that gets expanded, we're going to have the biggest landfill site in the southern hemisphere, which is pretty devastating. I know Australia likes to do things on this big scale, like Big Banana and Big Koala, but to have the biggest landfill site in the southern hemisphere, it's for a country that has the money and has the resources to change that is really depressing, really appalling for the next generations. And we really need to preserve the Earth's resources for something other than an unnecessary plastic spoon or fork. We've got the power to dictate how things are made, how they're packaged and presented to us, and the conditions that they're made under. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation tonight. Sorry if I sound a bit nasally tonight. When they said they were filming something, I was like, oh no, all the nights. If you've got any questions, we're going to have a roaming microphone.
When you take glass containers to a bulk food store, how do they net off the weight of the glass container?
So that's called the TARE method, T-A-R-E, and it's when you take a container. So I take a glass jar. Let's pretend this is a glass jar. They take it, they weigh it, and then they write down the weight, or you write down the weight, and then you fill it with your food. Then you take it and you tell them the weight, or it's written on your jar, and then they just subtract it. And they do that also at delis and at butchers as well. So anyway, you can get that weight subtracted. Or even cloth bags. My little mushroom grower, he's like, no, I'll weigh it. I'm like, oh, it's like 3 cents. He's like, no, that will add up. I'm like, thank you. There's 2 questions down here.
In terms of making soup out of the ends, do you cut, for example, there was a zucchini, and zucchini has a little bit of roots, I guess. So you cut right to the root. Or do you just put the root inside? And
I'll take that bit of root off, but I felt like if I have had that root go into my stock, it doesn't do anything for the taste. But for the relish, I will kind of take that off. So I just take that little bit off. But yeah, because you know people always just chop things at the end before they start chopping. So I just take that little bit off. Same with like tomato, I'll take the little green bit off, and then usually if I'm just chopping those scraggly bits at the ends, I'll just save them up for my relish or something like that.
You made reference to your young son a couple of times, and then just at the end, how our grandmothers and even perhaps some of our mothers lived. So I'm guessing that you used cloth nappies perhaps, and maybe face washers instead of baby wipes. But I'm just wondering, in the, I guess, change in generation where a lot of mums are now working and they have to send their kids to daycare, can we expect daycares to use cloth wipe and nappies, etc.?
There are some that do it. I do know some won't, but just because I think they don't know how. You know, there's a huge generation there that don't know how to use a cloth nappy. And I think it scares a lot of people. Like, we're a generation now who's very scared of germs, which is unfortunate. It is the germ factor, which I don't quite understand, because you've got bins full of poo and nappies that then go sit to landfill. And one of the reasons why we can't move a landfill site ever is because that human waste carries viruses, where if it gets flushed down the toilet or down our sinks, it gets treated in a treatment plant. So I think it's going to come down to education and educating people. It's not that scary either. And unfortunately, cloth nappies aren't that popular in Australia. It's something like over 90% of parents use disposables, or use disposables and cloth. I know a lot of my friends find it gross.
What about the time factor, I guess, and soaking and whatnot?
So with nappies, cloth nappies, today they're called MCNs, and you can get a whole variety of nappies, and they barely take any time out of your day. It takes me 15 minutes because I've got this wonderful thing called a washing machine that does it all for me.
True.
So all you've got to do really, you don't soak them these days,
Okay.
Because they're made of kind of different fibres, and they've discovered that when you soak them anyway, it reduces how absorbent the fibres are.
Okay.
So you just wash them, like you take, if it's been soiled, then you wash that off, and you pop that into a bucket. It's called dry paling. And if it's wee, you just pop it in there as well. And you just wait till you've got enough, and then you just pop it in the wash. And you wash it for, I think it's usually about on 40 degrees for whatever setting you've got. And that's it. You can do a pre-wash if you want, depending. I don't. I just wash them. And that's it. It's 15 minutes, and you hang them out to dry. And yeah, it's not that. And same with the wipes as well. It's a huge saving.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you use nappies up until they're 3 years old, it costs between $2,800 to $3,000, where cloth nappies will cost at most, including electricity and water, $1,500.
Cool.
So that is a saving. I was going to say, I just wrote a big blog post on my website about nappies. It's got links to all the different Facebook groups and the Nappy Association and everywhere you need to go, because it's a bit of a rabbit hole these days. Compared to my parents' generation, who had just like kind of one type of nappy, there are so many different types these days. So yeah, there's a world of information out there to help you.
I was wondering about stationery and pens and things like that. Can you buy those in bulk, and can you get pens that aren't made of plastic somewhere?
Yeah, you can still get like the old-fashioned like fountain pens, which are having a resurgence at the moment. They are a little bit more fiddly because you've got to like draw the ink out into them. But a lot of people use those. You can get refillable pens, refillable texters as well. Just thinking, do I have links to my website for them? I don't, but if you email me, I can tell you where to find them. It'll all be in my book though. No, just kidding. They will be, but I'm not doing that as a, yeah. So you can get refillable markers, refillable texters. You can get more eco-friendly pencils. I've even suggested that at the end of each term, you could call up a school and see what they've got left over, because a lot of kids will just leave their stuff and they've got a huge surplus of pencils and pens and they just get chucked away. You could go into any office block in Melbourne and go to their front counter and be like, can I have a look in your stationery cabinet, because they would have so many pens in there.
How can you get milk, including soy milk, waste-free?
Soy milk is a hard one. You can make it yourself if you wanted to. Apparently it's quite easy to do, but a little bit time consuming. I will say this though, like you can make other nut milks, it's a lot easier, like your hemp's milks, your almond milks and stuff like that. I have seen though in the UK, and I'm hoping it'll come here to Australia, where they've got milk in glass jars, like plant-based milk, and they drop it off and they pick it back up like in the old days. So I'm hoping someone's going to bring that here. I do know there's a bulk store that's looking to start that up here in Melbourne. For regular milk, there is St David's Dairy in Fitzroy that will take your glass. There's La Lateria as well, and there's another one as well out in Thomastown that will, has glass as well that you take and then refill it, just like they used to do. So there is ways, but it's just, there's not as much yet. But someone at some point, or if you want to start a new business, I reckon it will take off.
I'm a dog owner and go through a lot of plastic bags cleaning up poo. We have a worm farm that's just been installed in our apartment block, but we don't have any compost or separate way to reduce that waste. Have you got any suggestions of resources we could go to look at reducing the use of plastic bags?
So there is a pet-only composting system available that you can buy.
Yeah.
And the name has escaped me right now. But if you jump onto the Zero Waste Victoria and said that, you know, I'm looking for it, people would be like, do this, do that. I'm the advocate of just using newspaper.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other way to do it. There are biodegradable bags, but there is that, don't they actually completely biodegrade?
I don't think so.
So I would, try newspaper. I've seen out there like where people do these wonderful origami type fold things, so they're ready to kind of like scoop it up and pack it away if you want to.
Thanks for coming out, Erin. As a expectant mother, I have greatly appreciated your blog post recently, particularly on the MCNs. Such a minefield, and your post about morning sickness. It's all been great. One question: nappy balm that is compatible with MCNs, that is zero waste. Any suggestions there?
We struggled with that. I don't know if there is one really, unfortunately. You're always going to get that build up, regardless. I did find a really nice brand. I don't know if it's available down here, but the main ingredient in it was calendula oil. So if you get something that's just anti-inflammatory, basically. And there's another one, I think, but it comes in like metal it's made by one of the local hospitals. It's a nappy. If you email me, I'll send, sorry, mum brain, it's just like, and I'll be able to tell you the brands. But from what I've read and from what I've had my own experience, it builds up regardless. You just got to scrub it that bit extra harder. But another thing I do is just lots of nappy free time for them, you know, especially when they're little and they're not walking around too much. And the more it breathes and the more often you change, the less likely. And I also found things like the foods I'm eating, if you're breastfeeding, contribute heavily to, like, I found tomatoes, he'd get a nappy rash like that. Beans as well, nappy rash just like that. So sometimes it's the foods that you eat, just highly acidic foods, citrus, stuff like that, So just watch out and check to see what it could be, because you can sometimes just avoid it. If they're teething, he'll get nappy rash regardless. So. But just lots of nappy free time is usually just is good, and they love it. They love it, just squirming there. Anyway, miss my baby, sorry.
Thank you.
What's your best advice for reducing waste in school and workplace environments?
Where do I start? So for schools, where do you, if you did a waste audit, where do you think the most waste come from? It'd be the food. So the best thing to do would be to start getting designated bins. Then I would probably look at places where there's a lot of single-use materials being used. That might be the canteen, tuck shop, and look and see what you can swap there. I know quite a lot of schools have swapped out the single-use cutlery, the straws, napkins and stuff like that. So the best thing to do would be to conduct a waste audit. So that's where you really just look at what's going into your waste bin, into your waste stream. If you are a school who's looking to do that, I highly advise you chat with the St Kilda Eco Centre, who have worked with some schools in this area to reduce their waste. The Albert Park Primary School is another one of them. But the waste audit's going to be the best place. And I think also an easy way to do it is by setting up those separate bins, so it's easier to see where the waste is kind of coming from. But you will with the school, it's going to be food and packaging, definitely. Same with workplaces too. It's going to be the food, yeah. This lady here asked if a lot of people are contaminating the recycling bin, and you wonder if you should continue doing that or just put everything into the bin. I would look to see who is handling your recycling for your office, so whoever comes and picks it up, and see what their rules are, what can go into the recycling, and then put up a sign.
They're like this big, no coffee cups, and then just full bin of coffee cups.
Just a full bin of coffee cups. You could get in contact with, there's a new company, for people who saw the War on Waste, there's this guy who can now recycle coffee cups. It's called Simply Cups, and they will install something into your workplace that collects them separately in its own little bin. So you could do that, because sometimes just seeing its own bin will help, and then that goes and that gets, part of it gets recycled, part of it gets downcycled. Unfortunately, it's going to come to a lot of us, it's incentives and financial incentives. So if you could find some coffee shops close by that people go to from your workplace and see, hey, would you encourage discounts if we bought our own cups or our own mugs? So you could do that. You know, a lot of those cups that they use cost between 20 to 70 cents. So they should be offering discounts, so you could do that. You could create like a little War on Waste team at your office and see what you could do by looking at your waste stream. Unfortunately, it comes down to education and incentives for us adults.
You said leading by the example, the other people, and set that example. But my main struggle is how minimal those savings are for the shop owners to save on the cups. How 20 cents don't really matter to people, whether they're saving them or spending. And the low value of the packaging and the plastic bag, it's probably less than a cent worth for the store to buy it, and they want the customers flow through the store. It's convenient. It makes the cleaner's job quicker when they clean your bin to replace it with the new plastic bag than, I don't know, line it with the paper.
How do we convince people about the value?
Yeah.
I don't think we'll be able to do that to everyone. If we look at this room here, we're probably, you know, you've come here because you're interested, but there's a lot of people out there who aren't that interested and who didn't watch the War on Waste, or are not aware of some of these issues, or just think it will get fixed by someone. It'll get fixed by someone. Unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to require legislation to make those changes, like the plastic bag ban. You know, starting with that, starting with straws, it's just going to have to be us making noise to the people who can put rules in place to force people to make changes. Otherwise, we'll be waiting for... We'll be covered in plastic by the time everyone kind of realises we need to reduce our waste. So the people who are passionate about need to use our voices to speak louder than the people who will complain about living without the plastic bags. Because that's what's happened with Coles and Woolworths. They've discovered that the voice is louder of the people who want no more plastic bags and the people who would complain about no plastic bags. So if we just keep raising our voices, then we'll get those changes that we need. Otherwise, it's too hard for us to get those people to learn about the value yet, unfortunately. Unless if the War on Waste ends up on Channel 9 or Channel 7, it's not going to happen. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's the way it was. Yeah. Now I've worked on the other side of doing the campaigning and trying to get people to change. I've seen we've got a long way to go, but the fastest way there is getting people like Daniel Andrews or Josh Frydenberg to put in steps to help propel things forward.
So
which is a bit depressing.
It is an ethical choice rather than economical choice in so many cases. Like the example of recycling the glass is one of, like, recycling at the cost it comes, that it is more expensive to recycle than move the waste around the world or within Australia to dump it somewhere. It is way too expensive to do it. So it's just...
It's only expensive because we've made it expensive for ourselves here. We have got really lazy with our without value on resources, unfortunately. Like in the US, they've got a law about needing to use a certain percentage of recycled materials. Australia doesn't have any of that type of law. We saw a market there who wanted our stuff. We thought, quick money, we'll start sending it off. And within a couple years, China went, oh wait, this isn't working. So in 2013, they started waving their red flag, saying, look, I don't think we'll be able to continue doing this. That was a very long time ago. So as for economics, it's a lot of these small businesses don't have the time necessarily to sit down and realise that they can save money. Those plastic takeaway containers, the body of the container costs 10 cents, the lid costs 5 cents. So if you're a small deli owner in big markets, that's about $3,000 to $5,000 a year, which is quite a lot for a small business owner. It's just that no one's ever sat down with them and explained this stuff to them yet. The bigger businesses as well, they're not realising it. It's never been factored into them that they can save money by making some more sustainable choices. But they're starting to learn it. It's also these businesses don't have... There used to be programs set up where people would go and help these businesses make better decisions for the environment that would also help their bottom line. But a lot of those programs have vanished as well. So that's where we really need government to step up and help, because if you're a small business owner or you've got, you just want to please your customers, you're just not going to sit down and think about this stuff, unfortunately. So we need people to help them and remind them that you can make some changes and it will help you in the long run. Like I'm working with a person in Vic Market and he's gobsmacked about how much money he can save on plastic containers, So it'll get there. It'll get there. We've got to speak to the government, hopefully push them to set up and provide help to these other people. But it's hard.
Thank you for watching. This workshop has been provided by the City of Port Phillip to support you to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, water use and waste. For further information, please visit sustainableportphillip.com.